Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Marvel Plus podcast, the show where we talk the Marvel shows on Disney Plus and how they connect to the MCU. My name is Bret, aka Enigma9011. You can catch this podcast live over on twitch.tv/Enigma9011 every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You join the chat and all the fun theory talk. If you're a subscriber over there, we'd love to have you in on the conversation. But if you can't catch it live, that's A-OK. Goes over on YouTube. Just search Enigma9011. The very next day, Monday at 12 noon Eastern, you can check it out over there. Give it a watch, give it a listen, and let us know what you thought of the episode. So today we are continuing our Moon Knight discussion, right, Artemis? And we're going to be talking about Moon Knight episode 4, simply titled The Tomb. So, this one was an interesting one. We obviously left off last episode with quite the conundrum. We had discovered the location of the tomb, or Ahmet's tomb, with the star map from the sarcophagus, and then Khonshu rewinding the sky to see the star pattern so we could eventually get the coordinates for where the tomb is. In doing this, Khonshu has gotten himself locked up, which we will see in the small kind of blip opening here before the official opening credits, where we'll see his tomb where he's banished, or not his tomb, his kind of like a statue, his totem, where he is banished, being placed amongst some other gods who have faced a similar fate, which there appeared to be 10 of them. I don't know if that will come into play at all later. I happened to count them out. I was intrigued. So yes, Khonshu is now locked in this totem. Steven and Mark do not have the ability, as we'll learn soon, they no longer have the suit, nor do they have the ability of healing because of this separation. So, let's hop on into it. So, opening happens, and we're going to follow up with Layla and Steven post, obviously, this whole event. Layla's trying to wake up Steven. We see that some of Harrow's guards, or personnel, are approaching them in their car, and they will end up shooting at them. The two are going to roll down the hill to try and get some space between them, and Layla is going to make a run for their van as Steven is still unconscious. The people are going to find Steven. They claim that he's dead, just because, well, he's unconscious and just laying there. Layla, in an attempt to get their attention towards her, is going to light a flare that she finds in the van, and she kind of like circles around the van after they're following the first one, and she'll prepare a second flare and throw it at the ammunition in their truck and getting rid of them, taking care of that situation. And Steven's awake randomly, just like, oh hey, what happened? So now the two are going to leave that scene. Like I said, they do now have the coordinates for where the tomb is apparently located, thanks to the star map and Khonshu's little rewind ability there. So they're taking the van. Layla says they're going to need Mark for this situation. Obviously his mercenary abilities and like that skill set. But Steven is refusing. He disagrees with Mark in the reflection. He disagrees with Layla obviously asking for this. And he mentioned how Mark had mentioned once Khonshu was gone from Mark, that Mark would disappear from his life, essentially forever. Layla's not too happy with that because it also means him disappearing from her life, wherever he would run off to. So not great there. Mark's going to plead for the body one more time, saying this whole situation is a suicide mission, but Steven's not going to relinquish it, and they will leave the van, continuing on their path on foot to find the tomb. So they're going to kind of navigate through the desert a little bit, as we'll see, and they're going to stumble upon Harrow's camp, where all of his people were digging and such. And they found it, and they've kind of rappelled down into there. So the camp is abandoned at the moment. The two decide to loot it for any supplies that they can kind of gather themselves. And the two split up to do this. As the two split up, Mark is going to attempt to talk to Steven once again, explaining the whole situation, the no more suit, the no more healing, And, the two have to play this safe, especially for Layla's sake. Steven's going to go on this whole monologue, essentially, revealing that he has some feelings for Layla. Mark's not too happy about that. But in the meantime, we're going to flip back over to Layla, and she's getting some supplies, but we're going to see, as the camera pans, we're going to see some bloody boxes and what appears to be a knife on the ground. I'm not sure if this was a knife from the van. There was a point that I kind of glossed over earlier where Layla was trying to lure the guards over to her with the flares. Previous to that, she was hiding in the van, and the camera had panned over to these knives or tools, whatever it was, in the van itself, kind of in like a suitcase-looking object, or a carrying case, whatever it was. I'm not sure if it was the same knife, but that just kind of raised a question mark for me when watching it. We don't get any answers about it this episode. If it is anything, potentially it could be something else, but we'll get on into that. So anyways, now we get the not most awkward, but just a weird interaction, I'd say, between Layla and Steven. So the two regroup after getting their supplies, and they're close to each other. Layla mentions that Steven smells like Mark, which, duh, they're the same person, or at least the same body. She goes in to kiss him, and Steven pulls away and kind of just lays it all out there. Says that Mark is trying to protect her from Khonshu because Khonshu's trying to make her his next avatar, and is really concerned with her protection. So then she thanks him for being honest, honesty over protection, and then Steven goes in to kiss her, and then they do kiss. Okay, so whatever that is. So the two decide to go down in the cave, because duh, Tomb's down there, and Layla's gonna lay down. She gets down there fine, and Mark will then control the body to have Steven punch himself in the face. As this is going on, we're going to cut back to Layla. She seems to be drawing something in the sand, and it almost looks like an E, but like a very curved E. So she draws that. As she's drawing that, we're going to see Steven fall into the cave due to Mark's interference up above. Turns out he's fine. All right. Once he regathers himself, he looks around, and he's like a kid in a candy shop, loving what he's seeing down there. All obviously the writing on the wall, the different architecture, stuff like that. And as he's looking around, he stumbles upon some other writing that looks like a 13, but it's not just written in the sand. It almost looks like it's white, like it was chalk, or it's been there for a while. And Steven's going to ask about it. And Layla's claiming that she did it, admits to it, and claims it's for her father. Apparently her father had died while working. He was a big archaeologist. So, okay. That was kind of also, along with the tool, kind of making me question Layla a little bit. But the two are going to continue. They're going to explore farther into the ruins to try and, once again, find the tomb. And they realize it's a maze. There's some bullet casings around, so obviously the guards who had been shooting at something, a little concerned about that. As Layla is trying to figure out what path they need to take, Steven decides, to draw the Eye of Horus on a table in the center of the room. And he explains that apparently the eye represents each of the senses. And the way that they figure out what path of the puzzle they need to take is it's the voice of the avatar, the god. The avatar is the voice of the god. Sure, that made sense. So they line it up with that point. That's the point they're going to take to try and find the tomb. Okay, so they follow that path into another room. And we have kind of like this weird, like, operating room. It's like a table. There's some other people there that were not so lucky participants or searchers. What's the word? Scavengers of this tomb and area here. And the artwork also around mentions like sorcerers who are protecting the pharaoh in this pyramid, keeping him safe. So as they're kind of exploring, looking at all the stuff around the room, they're going to notice that there's some fresh blood on the ruins. And there's also a very dried path of blood leading down a certain path. Both agree, let's not go that way. So they try and find another path. Luckily, they're able to find one up high, and they're going to pursue that. So Stephen's going to climb up there and, try and see if it's a viable path. While this is happening, the two are going to hear some gunshots down that pathway that they had mentioned they didn't want to go. They're both going to hide. And we're going to see a figure, mummy-esque figure, dragging another, placing them on the table, killing him, and then essentially dissecting him and pieces of him into these little, essentially urns around the table. So great, we got spooks in here. Layla, trying to maneuver herself and get out of that situation, is unfortunately going to knock one over. She's going to reset it, but the monster has picked up on that. So the monster's going to look around. Stephen, trying to see what is going on, will make a loud commotion up where he is. Creature gets startled, starts crawling up where he is. Layla says, okay, takes it into her hands and will distract it once again, luring it back down to chase after her. With Layla doing the second distraction, there's a table up by Stephen. He's going to push that table onto the mummy-esque creature, personoid, and the two are going to split up from there. Stephen taking the higher path, and Layla taking the lower path. So now we're going to start kind of bouncing in between the two from this point. So hopefully I can kind of keep this simple. I think I'm going to start with Layla, and then we'll go over to Stephen and see what he finds. Alright, so Layla's POV. So Layla has run down this path with the blood and essentially just kind of stumbles upon this giant cavern that is really, really deep. She drops a flare down there. No way she can simply just jump down to any safe platform or anything like that. So she's hearing the clicking that we've been kind of hearing previously in the episode, obviously coming from this mummy-esque figure. And she's going to inch herself along the wall, along this very, very narrow path over to the other side. As she's doing this, we are going to notice that there's these separations in between the solid wall bit, and we will see after she crosses one of them that the mummy is doing the same thing kind of on the opposite side of the wall. This is going to lead to a jump scare as Layla's going to pass over to the other platform safe across the other side, and she's going to get grabbed by this mummy and dragged into this darkness and crevice in between the two sections. Luckily, she's able to break free. She gets out of that darkness area for a moment, able to break off one of the hands of the figure. Figure's going to continue to pursue her, pushes her down the ground. They have a struggle there. She fights it off by using a flare that she still had, and Layla will throw herself, along with the guard, off the cliff. Luckily, she's able to hold on, climbs up herself, recollects herself, but unfortunately, Harrow has been watching from across the path as the two will lock eyes. Harrow's going to compliment her on how she handled the situation. There's more gunshots in the background, obviously dealing with problems. And now we're going to get a little bit of background on the situation we had, I believe, You'll see the last episode of the episode before that, where the father, Harrow, had mentioned potentially what had happened there. And Harrow mentions the dad and kind of gives us the backstory of, like, this was something her dad was pursuing in his research, to see that the Egyptian gods walk among us and, are present. And we learn that her father was murdered by mercenaries during one of his expeditions. And we know Mark is a mercenary. Apparently Mark potentially could have done this. So we now have those seeds planted in her head of, is Mark a good guy, or did he do something very, very bad? So this is going to happen. Harrow's going to call out for some guards. Layla will leave that situation, obviously, in a huff. So now, while all of this has been going on, Steven's side of the things. So he's taken this upper path, and once again, he's geeking out about all the ruins and, all the things around him. And Mark is going to seemingly confront Steven in a reflection about the kiss and about telling her the truth, which he admits to he didn't expect. The two are going to discuss that briefly, and Steven is going to stumble upon the lost tomb of Alexander the Great. Cool. Turns out that Alexander the Great was the avatar for Amit back in the day. So Steven's debating opening the sarcophagus, the Ushepti, or whatever they're looking for this whole time in the tomb. It's supposed to be in there. He does open it. It's not in there. So now, okay, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to figure out? Where could it be? Steven mentions, well, if people are looking for it, they're not going to just put it in plain sight for people. They're going to hide it further. And he mentions that the avatar, Alexander the Great, would be the voice for the god, Amit, as we mentioned earlier with the Eye of Horus puzzle. So Steven decides to unwrap the face of the mummy and decides to search his jaw and reach in. Luckily, finds it. Reaches down the throat. He'll pull out a small wrapping from the throat. This will be the Ushepti that they need. It was gross, him reaching into the mouth. I mean, yeah. So Steven has discovered it. He's stoked. He's excited. He's really happy that, this worked. He figured it out. Layla will now approach in the same room. And obviously, she's not in a great mood. Steven's proud of himself, showing it to her, saying they won. He's excited. And Layla asks, can he hear me right now? She wants to talk to Mark. She wants to confront him. And I don't know how, whether it was Steven backed down because of the situation or Mark somehow overpowered him, but Mark has reclaimed the body and is trying to have them leave this situation, because obviously trouble's afoot. But Layla wants answers, and she simply asks him, did you kill him? Did you kill my dad? Mark says of course he didn't, and then he kind of explains the situation. He was there. He admits that. His partner mercenary apparently got greedy and executed everyone at the dig site. Mark tried to protect, I don't know if specifically the dad or the situation, tried to stop it, but this partner also turned on him. Mark was apparently supposed to die that night as well, but somehow did not. So they have a whole thing, talking about that situation. Not great. We hear more of the clicking. Mark says, hey, get out of here. I'll buy you some time. Grabs an axe from the tomb that they had just opened. Harrow and the gunman arrive instead. We thought it was going to be, the guards. And Harrow's going to do this whole little speech like, you're free of Khonshu, it must be quite freeing that his voice is not in your head right now. You have an important decision to make. Mark is going to retaliate with the axe, being the aggressor, taking out 3 of the guards before Harrow is going to shoot him twice in the chest, killing Mark, essentially. He says he can't save anyone who won't save themselves. We're going to see Mark fall into this water pool. And the pool's not that deep, but we will see this moment where, I'm presuming, Mark's spirit is going to sink into the depths far and far. So we're going to get a fade out and a fade in. And we're going to find these 2 new explorers on their journey. And it looks very aged footage, would be one way to put it. And I'm like, this looks like an old TV show. There's the adventurer and then kind of his sidekick. The sidekick is going to get spooked by a trap as the skeleton's going to drop down. And Explorer's going to go into this whole monologue, like they're going to be fine. We're looking for this treasure. If I'm not Dr. Stephen Grant, blah, blah, blah. Red flag. That's the same name as our main character. And we're going to slowly pan out from this old footage into this big, giant, white-ass room. Everything's very clean, very pristine. And we're going to see as we kind of move around this room and pan across that there's a lot of people here, all kind of doing their own thing, but it's off-putting in a way. There's one guy just shouting out bingo numbers. There's a guy doing a Rubik's Cube. There's a woman drawing. I believe somebody was sorting out drinks or something like that. So we learn that this is essentially a mental hospital. Or psycho ward, yeah. As we're panning around, one small thing that you might see. The woman drawing is drawing a bird with the Khonshu skull on it. Okay, interesting note there. Potential theory later on that. So we know it's the hospital. And we see Mark/Steven chilling in a chair. And he's been set up to, I guess it's his favorite spot. He can look out this window. But he's very sedated. And guess who works there? Oh, Layla works there. Okay. She's trying to help him. The bingo numbers are still being shouted out. Apparently Steven/Mark has 1 bingo. Layla's going to redeem it for him or claim it that it's hers. And she says she's going to share the prize this time. Okay. Now, as Steven is sitting here, I mentioned he's looking outside. The reflection is going to call out to him, and he's going to react to this. He's going to attempt to stand up, leave the chair, and he falls on his face. He's tethered to the chair, similar to how we saw with how he deals with his insomnia. And as he falls to the ground, he's also going to drop something that he was holding on to. It's the Moon Knight figure. Interesting. Before we continue, Mrs. G in the chat says thought she was a patient. That's a possibility. I don't know. I thought she had a name tag like a worker. That would be interesting to double check. That might make a little bit more sense why she would claim the bingo compared to somebody working there. But I don't know. We'll have to see. I thought she was messing with the equipment that was in front of him. But yeah, I'll have to go back and check that out. So anyways, he drops the Moon Knight figure on the ground as he's trying to get out of his chair. So now we see him kind of in a therapy session. And it's another familiar voice. Oh boy, it's Harrow. Harrow's the doctor. And he's talking with him, trying to, relate to him, talk about a film he enjoys, and trying to get him to respond in a positive way. Steven/Mark's looking around, recognizes a lot of, different things around the room that are familiar. He notices the cane, which becomes a big point later on that he kind of freaks out about. He notices some Egyptian statues, or at least things that kind of resemble it. So he starts freaking out. So he freaks out and tries to get out of the room. And because of this, he tries to leave the room. We get the same line as before: I can't help you if you don't help yourself. And Mark Steven, is going to finally be able to say the words before he attempts his full escape of, "You shot me." He remembers that. Mark tries to leave. Goes to the door. Door's locked. He breaks the glass in the door window. But after he does this, some nurses come in and trying to hold him back. Whole time Sarah's like, keep him safe, don't hurt him, blah, 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 trying to talk down the whole situation. Mark's able to run away, get away, throwing some elbows into the nurses, hurting them. He gets away, runs down the hallway, and the hallway seems to shift or move. Some components, like some rolly carts, kind of slide to the outside edge. Interesting. Mark decides to cut over to a side room, lets the nurses pass, but then he hears something behind him. He's going to turn around, and there's a sarcophagus in there, and it's bustling around, and he hears screaming in there. Okay, strange. Decides to open it. It's Steven. Both embrace. How is this possible? They don't know. What's the last thing you remember? Getting shot. They both freak out because they know they're on the same page. Okay. Both are going to leave the room. As they're kind of making their way through the hospital, they're going to find another sarcophagus rattling around, red. But they leave this one. Don't know if that's important, but interesting that they happen to see it. So now they're going to try and attempt to leave through another door. We're going to see a big shadow through the door's windows. The door is going to open, and it's going to be a hippo in goddess garb. The hippo is going to say hello. The two are going to scream in a panic, and the episode is going to end there. So, shit hit the fan at the end of this episode as we take a far right turn. So we knew mental illness was kind of tied into this character. Or at least we kind of had talked about the idea of it, how the director had talked about it before. We weren't sure if this was Mark taking over Steven's body and it just was his conscious kind of, taking over, like not renting out space, but using the body, and then maybe they would leave after the situation is done. So, as we can tell right now, or what we can infer, is that this whole Mark Steven thing is a split personality. Does that help things make sense? No. But this was an interesting way to kind of fully explore that. It gives us the seeds of doubt that this whole situation was made up, and this is just things that they are seeing in this situation, where they can kind of build this story in their own head of, I'm an archaeologist after this movie I really like, and then there's all these Egyptian stuff, and I'm going to take the character, the doctor, and put him in this situation. I'm going to take the nurse, the patient, whatever Layla is, put her in this situation. It's kind of like it's a weird, what's the movie? Holy shit. Peanut Gallery, what's the movie with the ruby slippers?
Wizard of Oz?
Thank you, Jesus Christ. Wizard of Oz situation here. Thank you. Where he's pulling these characters. Now, clearly, as we'll find out later as he opens this fucking sarcophagus and his other personalities in there, that's not the case. But they gave us they were sowing the seeds of doubt in us, like, whoa, was this all made up? Now, what was the hippo? The big question of all of this. I am assuming that the hippo goddess is the friend from the gods meeting. Her name is escaping me. I believe it starts with a Y. I believe it's her trying to help Khonshu by having these two get him free from his imprisonment. How the fuck she got there, how they're in this weird made-up world thingy, I don't know. That is what we need to figure out. What powers does Harrow fully possess to then have Mark, Steven in this situation? We'll have to figure out. But that's my guess, is the friend from the Egyptian god meeting is here to help them get Khonshu free. So, what we may be able to infer from this farther is maybe Harrow succeeded in his mission. Obviously, shooting Mark, the Ucepti's right there in his hand. Ucepti, excuse me. He's able to use that to get Amit free. Maybe with Amit free, he's able to create whatever fake world this is for Mark and Steven to try and keep them at bay. I don't know. Or it's before that, just before the full resurrection thing. And my thinking of why it could be he already has succeeded is because the goddess friend is here being like, oh shit, things real fucked up. Let's get him out of there. We need their help. We'll see. So, hopefully that end sequence makes a little bit more sense. We'll definitely have to see, I'm sure they'll explain it next week, how this all occurred. Like, how was he able to be in this weird psychic ward and see himself, or at least his other self? I don't know. Things are getting weird, but then again, the whole series has been kind of weird. But it's really interesting. I liked this whole little mind game thing that they played with us, creating this situation where it potentially could have been a faux pas, a little whole faux world story that he was making up. But yeah, we'll have to see how it plays out from here. But that's episode 4 of Moon Knight. Hope you guys are enjoying the show so far. And hopefully you're keeping your head screwed on tight as it gets more and more confusing as we go. But this has been another episode of the Marvel Plus podcast. My name is Bret, a.k.a. Enigma9011. You can catch this podcast live over on twitch.tv/Enigma9011 every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Join the chat. Join in on the fun theory talk. If you're a subscriber over there, we'd love to have you in on the conversation. But if you can't catch it live, that's A-OK. Just search on YouTube, Enigma9011, where it's posted the very next day at 12 noon Eastern. Give it a watch. Give it a listen over there. And we'd appreciate you for it. We're almost done with Moon Knight, y'all. 2 more episodes. So, hope you guys are still along for the ride. If it's losing you, I'm so sorry. But yeah, we'll have to see how it goes from here. And maybe things will start kind of evening out as we move into our next series of Miss Marvel. Maybe things will be a little bit more grounded and streamlined, I guess you could say. But yeah, thank you guys for hanging out today. Hope you guys are enjoying the show, and I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.